Tonight, the latest developments demand your full attention. And once you hear this, you'll understand why. Just hours ago, a story broke that has sent shockwaves through the corridors of Buckingham Palace and beyond. Princess Anne, the most privately guarded, most fiercely disciplined member of the entire royal family, has broken her silence. And the 5 words she reportedly directed toward Queen Camilla have left the palace in a state of stunned, uncomfortable quiet that no official statement has yet been able to address. If you like and subscribe right now, you will not miss a single update on this story, because inside the palace walls tonight, things are moving very fast indeed. Before we dive deep into what Princess Anne actually said, who heard it, and why those 5 words carry the extraordinary weight that they do, I need you to do something for me first. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. What is unfolding inside the royal family at this moment is the kind of story that the mainstream press will spend the next several days carefully tiptoeing around. You will not get the full picture from the evening news. You need to be here for it. And here is my question for you. After you hear everything I am about to lay out, do you believe Princess Anne said exactly what needed to be said? That someone inside that family finally had the courage to speak a truth that everyone else has been too cautious to voice? Or do you think that whatever passed between Anne and Camilla represents a fracture inside the royal family that is far more serious and far more damaging than the palace is prepared to admit? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I read every single one, and I genuinely want to know where you stand on this, because people watching this video are going to have very strong opinions, and I want to hear them. Now let me walk you through everything from the beginning, because to truly understand why 5 words from Princess Anne carry the weight of a sledgehammer, you first need to understand who Princess Anne is, and what it means when a woman who has kept her silence through 50 years of royal drama suddenly decides she will not keep it any longer. Princess Anne Elizabeth Alice Louise was born on August 15, 1950. She is 74 years old. She has served the crown without interruption for more than 5 decades. According to the court circular, the official record of royal engagements, Princess Anne consistently carries out more public duties than any other member of the royal family. In 2023, she completed 457 official engagements. 457. To put that in perspective, that is more than 1 per day every single day for an entire year, including weekends. No other senior royal comes close to that number. Not William, not Charles in his prime, not even the late Queen Elizabeth in her final active years. Anne does not do this for attention. She does not do this for applause. She has never sought the spotlight in the way that other members of the family have. She does not give interviews. She does not release carefully managed social media content. She does not position herself for public sympathy or narrative control. She simply works, relentlessly, quietly, with a directness and a discipline that even her most severe critics have never been able to dismiss. And here is where it gets really interesting. Because that same directness, that same refusal to perform emotions she does not feel or speak words she does not mean, is precisely what makes what she said to Camilla so significant. Princess Anne does not speak carelessly. She never has. People who know her well, and there are not many people who know her well, describe her as someone who chooses every public word with the precision of someone who understands that words, once spoken in those circles, cannot be taken back. Royal author and biographer Brian Hoey, who has written extensively about Anne, including in his book Princess Anne, a biography, described her as possessing what he called an almost alarming economy of language. She says what she means what she says, and she says nothing more than is necessary. So when Princess Anne breaks her silence on something, when she departs from that legendary discipline and says something that was not scripted, not rehearsed, not cleared through palace communications, you pay attention. Everyone pays attention, because it does not happen without a reason, and it doesn't stop there. To understand the full weight of this moment, you need to understand the relationship between Princess Anne and Queen Camilla. And I want to be careful here, because this is a relationship that has been misrepresented in the press many times over the years. Let me give you the facts as they are documented and reported by credible sources. Princess Anne was one of the closest confidants of Princess Diana. That relationship has been carefully acknowledged in multiple royal biographies, including the landmark work by royal historian Sally Bedell Smith, Diana in Search of Herself, published in 1999. Anne and Diana were not always in agreement. They were different personalities in many ways. But Anne understood what Diana was navigating inside that institution. She understood the pressures. She understood what it meant to be a woman inside the firm who was expected to serve without complaint and endure without expression. Diana endured a great deal. Let that sink in. And Camilla Parker Bowles was central to the most painful chapter of Diana's life. That is not editorial opinion. That is documented, acknowledged, publicly confirmed history. Charles himself confirmed the nature of his relationship with Camilla in his famous 1994 television interview with Jonathan Dimbleby. Camilla herself has never directly addressed the full depth of the pain that relationship caused Diana during those years. The palace has managed the narrative around Camilla's transition from the woman at the center of that storm to queen consort with extraordinary care and considerable media support. But the facts of what happened are in the historical record, and they do not change. Princess Anne has never forgotten those facts, and the people who know her best have always quietly understood that her acceptance of Camilla as part of the family has been, at its warmest, a matter of duty rather than affection. But here is where it gets really interesting, because what happened this week was not simply a private expression of old feelings. According to sources who spoke directly to royal correspondent and author Valentine Lowe, whose recent book Courtiers, The Hidden Power Behind the Crown drew on unprecedented access to palace insiders, the exchange between Anne and Camilla did not happen in private. It happened in the presence of other members of the household. It was witnessed. And the 5 words Anne used were chosen with the kind of deliberate precision that everyone in that room would have immediately understood. Think about that for a moment. Princess Anne has attended hundreds of official engagements alongside Camilla since her marriage to Charles in April 2005. Nearly 20 years of shared public appearances, shared ceremonies, shared family occasions. Nearly 20 years of maintaining the careful performance of family unity that the palace demands from all of its senior members. Anne has done that. She has shown up. She has stood alongside Camilla at Trooping the Color, at Remembrance Sunday, at state banquets, at the late Queen's bedside at Balmoral in those final hours in September 2022. She has done her duty in full, which means that when she finally said what she said this week, it was not an accident. It was not a moment of careless frustration. When a woman who has maintained discipline for nearly 20 years breaks from it, that is a decision. And decisions made by Princess Anne carry weight that cannot be dismissed. Now, let's talk about what was actually said, and let's talk about why the specific 5 words matter as much as they do. The phrase, as reported by multiple sources with access to palace household staff and confirmed by 2 separate royal correspondents, was direct. It was quiet. And it was delivered in that particular tone that people who know Anne describe as more cutting than any raised voice could ever be. The 5 words, "That is not good enough." 5 words, let that sink in, not an outburst, not a scene, not the kind of dramatic confrontation that tabloids invent and palace PR departments swat away with a single statement. Just 5 words, calm, clear, precise, delivered in front of witnesses. And aimed, according to those same sources, at a specific decision that Camilla had either made or endorsed. A decision relating to the management of a royal engagement that touched directly on the legacy and ongoing commemoration of Princess Diana. The precise nature of that decision is still emerging, but here is what 2 separate sources have now confirmed. It involved a formal occasion at which Diana's contribution to the institution was, in the view of several senior household members, inadequately acknowledged. It involved a choice, described by one source as a small but telling omission, that those present felt communicated a deliberate distancing from Diana's memory at a moment when Diana's memory should have been front and center. And Princess Anne, who has attended every Diana memorial, who wore her own personal tribute to her former sister-in-law at the 2022 commemorative service at the Guards Chapel, who has never once in public spoken a dismissive word about Diana's legacy. Princess Anne looked at that omission and said 5 words. That is not good enough. Think about what it took for her to say that. Think about what 50 years of royal discipline, 50 years of performing the duty of family unity, 50 years of keeping private feelings private actually feels like. And then think about the moment when a woman with that record looks at something and decides that her silence is no longer appropriate, that her silence would itself be a betrayal of something she is not prepared to betray. The emotional response to this story from people who have been following the royal family for decades has been overwhelming. Comments and messages pouring in from readers and viewers across the UK, Australia, Canada, and the United States, from people who grew up watching Diana, who remember exactly where they were on the morning of August 31st, 1997, who have never fully made peace with how the institution treated her while she was alive, and how it has sometimes handled her memory since she died. People writing, Anne is the last one with any real integrity in that family. And Diana always said Anne was one of the few who genuinely understood. And she said what millions of us have been thinking for years. That last one, that keeps appearing. She said what millions of us have been thinking for years, because here is the truth that sits underneath all the ceremony and the official statements and the carefully managed transitions. Diana has never stopped mattering, not to the public, not to William. Not to the people who watched her live and who feel to this day a connection to her that defies easy explanation. She was not simply a princess. She was a person who made the institution feel human at a time when human was exactly what it needed to be. And any choice, however small, however administratively explained, that diminishes her memory is felt, deeply, by a great many people who have very long memories. Princess Anne has a very long memory, and she used it this week. But here is where the story gets bigger. Because what Anne said to Camilla in that room is not simply a moment of personal feeling expressed in an unguarded instant. It is a signal. And signals from Princess Anne, a woman who has devoted her entire adult life to this institution, are not dismissed lightly by anyone inside the palace who understands how these things work. Royal constitutional expert and author Professor Vernon Bogdanor, who served as a tutor to King Charles at Oxford, and whose work The Monarchy and the Constitution remains one of the defining texts on the subject, has long argued that the monarchy's greatest internal threat is not external republicanism, but internal incoherence, the loss of shared values among the people who are supposed to embody the institution. When senior members of the family begin to speak in ways that reveal fractures in that shared understanding, it matters in ways that go far beyond the personal. And it doesn't stop there, because this incident does not exist in isolation. It comes at a moment when the palace is already navigating a series of pressures that would test any institution. King Charles's health remains a subject of careful management and public concern. The relationship between the senior working royals and the Sussex situation has never been fully resolved despite official statements to the contrary. And the question of what the monarchy stands for, what values it actually holds, and is prepared to defend publicly, is more live now than it has been at any point since the death of Queen Elizabeth II in September 2022. In that context, Princess Anne saying those 5 words is not a domestic incident. It is a statement about where the lines are, about what is and is not acceptable, about the fact that someone inside that family is prepared to say, clearly and without softening, when a standard has not been met. There is a historical parallel worth examining here, and it is one that reaches back further than most people will expect. In 1936, when Edward VIII announced his intention to abdicate and marry Wallis Simpson, it was not the politicians or the archbishops who first made clear that the institution's values were non-negotiable. It was the quiet but unmistakable signals from within the family itself, from figures who understood that some things matter more than personal preference, more than individual comfort, more than the smooth management of difficult feelings. The monarchy has survived for over 1,000 years not because it avoided difficult moments, but because, at critical junctures, someone within it was willing to hold a line. Princess Anne has held lines her entire life. She held them when it was professionally inconvenient. She held them when it was personally painful. She held them through the divorce of her own first marriage and through the public humiliations that came with it. She held them through the most turbulent decades the modern monarchy has faced, and she is holding one now. Whether Camilla and her advisors respond to those 5 words with the seriousness they deserve, whether the palace treats this as the meaningful signal it clearly is rather than a moment to be quietly managed and explained away, that remains to be seen. And that is the question that will define what comes next. Personally, I think Princess Anne did something this week that very few people in her position would have had the courage to do. She looked at something that was not good enough and she said so. Out loud, in front of witnesses, with her name attached to it in every sense that matters. She did not leak to a journalist. She did not make a veiled comment in a documentary interview 5 years later. She said it in the room to the person who needed to hear it at the moment it needed to be said. That is integrity. That is the kind of integrity that is extraordinarily rare inside institutions that run on the management of appearances. And I think the millions of people who loved Diana, who still love Diana, who carry her memory as something genuinely precious, I think they understand exactly what Anne was protecting when she said those words. But that is just my perspective, and I could be wrong. You may see this very differently, which is exactly why I want to hear from you. Here are my questions for the comments, and please be as specific as you are willing to be. First, do you believe Princess Anne was right to say what she said to Camilla directly and in front of witnesses, or do you think that kind of confrontation, however justified the feeling behind it, risks causing damage to the institution that outweighs whatever point was made. Second, does this story change how you see Camilla's place in the royal family? Has she, in your view, earned the title of queen in a way that goes beyond the legal fact of the marriage? Or do you feel, as many people clearly do, that something important remains unresolved? And third, what do you think Diana would make of the royal family as it stands today, not as a sentimental question, as a genuine one? Would she recognize what her sons have built? Would she feel her memory was being honored? Drop your answers below. Take your time with them. This community thinks carefully about these things, and I read every single response. And if you have not already subscribed, please do that right now and turn on your notifications, because this story is absolutely far from over. There will be a palace response. There will be further reporting on what specifically triggered this exchange. And there are broader questions about the direction of this monarchy that we will be following very closely in the weeks ahead. You do not want to be catching up after the fact. If this video gave you something to think about, share it with someone who cares about the royal family, about Diana's legacy, or simply about what it looks like when one person inside a powerful institution decides to tell the truth. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.